Welcome to Unsolicited UX, a podcast full of advice and opinions that you didn't ask for. I'm Jay Keatsman, and each month I'll be sitting down with a professional from the world of UX, product design, and tech to dig into their work, their wins, and their lessons learned, so you don't have to. Whether you're deep in the trenches or just a little UX curious, there's something here for everyone. Check out Unsolicited UX on Substack, Spotify, and YouTube, and enjoy the conversation. Nashmil, welcome to Unsolicited UX.
Thank you so much for having me.
Could you start by just introducing yourself?
Yes, my name is Nashmil Mobasseri. I'm a product designer living in Helsingborg, in a city in southern part of Sweden. I have been working in UX world since 2019. I've got a couple of degrees. My first master's degree is in service management. And then after a while from Lund University, and after a while, I realized that maybe doing service work as in service industry is not my direct cup of tea. So I decided to pivot, and I studied three other programs. I studied first programming for Android and iOS. Then I studied mobile commerce, and then I got a job as a programmer. So I started working in IT world as a developer, actually iOS developer. After a year and a half, after like a project, I think one or two projects, then I realized that, oh, I love design. I have always loved design. I started learning design and working with graphics since when I was 16. Probably I went to my first Photoshop course. And also my mom is an interior designer and my sister is a fashion designer. So design has always been, very much integrated in our lives. So I started working as a designer, and then I realized, oh, maybe I should, get a degree in the area as well. So that's when I studied my second master's degree in digital design. I love design. I'm very, very much interested in design. I think it's such an exciting topic because it's like a combination of a lot of things. It's such a multidisciplinary topic. You need to know psychology, you need to know the culture, you need to know sociology, you need to have like some eye for the design. So I really love design, and I am also Interaction Design Foundation lead in southern Sweden. So we have some events that we do that I prepare for. I do some talks in different conferences and some local things in different companies. Write some articles about UX. Quite active on LinkedIn. As my hobbies, I am a potter. I do lots of pottery. Yeah, I do lots of pottery. I do some calligraphy, some painting. I'm in love with photography, landscape photography. So I have a very active Instagram account that has no picture of myself. It's just, the landscape. And I travel a lot. I visited 54 countries in the world. So
amazing.
Lots of pictures from my trips as well.
What's your photography Instagram handle?
Nashmil Mobasseri.
Okay.
Nashmil Mobasseri. Yeah. I love design that much that, there have been nights that I couldn't sleep and I woke up and started designing. It is, I really found my thing, my cup of tea, the calling in life. And it's also very, very rewarding that you could, do things and you contribute to people's lives to improve their lives quality, especially for me, who is an accessibility advocate as well. So I find it very interesting and very rewarding to be able to help people
Okay, so I want to start back at the beginning of your journey that you just thank you for sharing. But you mentioned service management. And I also have a service industry background, not academically, but just for the paycheck. and but I like to learn something that I think is really important is transferable skills and what you bring from past experience. Often, I think that past experience can be almost more important than your industry experience in shaping how you approach your work. So I'm curious if there's anything you've taken from service management and brought with you into the design field.
Absolutely. I'm a consultant working in a company called Softhouse. And being a consultant is kind of a service field as well. It's just you cater to different type of people in compared to maybe service industry. If you think about tourism and hospitality, there you work with travelers. Here you work with customers who need help with their app or their websites or anything. Um, so this service minded mentality that I have is I find it very useful. This mindset of co-creation and creating extra values alongside of the real value you're creating, you give like an extra value. That has always been a very big thing for me. That has very much helped me actually um, to to feel fulfilled of the work that I'm doing. That I feel that I offer more than I am expected to do. Also, I think since it was a service management, so I have studied a bunch of management um, related topics as well, marketing management, leadership related topics that I use actually daily in my work. So it has been very helpful in the current field. Yeah.
How do you feel those different types of management that you learned about? How have you applied them in your current work as a consultant?
Uh, I am a lot more interested in leadership than management. Uh, um, what I do is that I mentor as well, and I try to. I'm I'm very much into teaching everything I know. I'm not a type of a person who say, "Oh, if I teach everything, this person is going to take my job." I'm like, bring it on. If you are better than me, take my job. Why not? I am the one who has to improve. But as a mentor, it's my responsibility to teach everything I know because that's what I have signed up for. That's from my perspective. So I am more of the philosophy that you lift the person up and you lead them towards their goal while they take, of course, their own responsibilities. But I think managing someone is not directly my thing. I'm more of a leader and a mentor, and trying to help people achieving their goal as good as I can.
Yeah. You also mentioned your background in programming and development, which I think is an interesting path into design because designers work closely with engineers. And you see, I mean, I imagine that having that shared language probably really benefits you in collaboration. Can you speak a little bit to what it's like to be a designer with an engineering background, like the pros or cons of that?
I think I have experienced more of a pros than cons. Um, I would say I'm kind of loved by by the developers because I don't design like out of this world things, and they're like, we can't do this. I am kind of familiar with the limitations that they are facing, so I don't do things that they can't create. And I'm very flexible. So if something doesn't work, if it doesn't exist in a library that they are using, let's take a discussion. We can talk about it. Show me what you've got. Then we can, we can change the design that we have today and see how it fits what you have. I don't like make people's lives difficult, but of course I won't back off 100% either. So it's been it I have had a very positive experience with having the programming background, but I can imagine that it could also be limiting, since right in the beginning my brain is like, no, 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 this is not gonna work. So it just limits me probably in some areas, um, that I'm not it's not done consciously, but it's just unconsciously um it limits me, so that it stops me directly in the beginning when I start thinking about things that could be a little bit of, you know out of this world kind of a thing. But my brain is like, no, no, it's not gonna work, don't even go that way. But in general, I've had very positive experience with it.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for designers who don't have experience as a programmer in how to effectively work with them? I mean, you've mentioned a few in terms of having that feasibility lens and being flexible, but to someone that might be foreign to, what advice do you have?
I think, in my opinion, designers should learn a bit of a controversial topic, but should learn a little bit of programming. Not that they need to code, but they need to have the understanding of what it means if something is nil. What happens? What happens to your design if there is the text is nil? If there is something is wrong, how are you going to do that? These are things that either you do it so many times, you make that mistake so many times, and then you learn, or you actually gather the knowledge and you think about it right away. So I think every designer would benefit from knowing a little bit about programming. uh, and also I think flexibility in in listening to the developers and being open to make changes if it's needed would help a lot.
You mentioned that you are flexible, but you don't back down. So, like, I'm curious about how you draw those lines.
Mm, I choose my battle, I would say. The easiest way is that I choose my battles. Sometimes I'm like, okay, we go with what you have. The alternative that you have is as good. So, okay, if it's easier for you, let's do that. Sometimes I'm like, no, sorry, this is something that is going to be used through the whole system. So it's better that you spend time now, figure it out, so you could reuse it later. Reuse the component, reuse the color, whatever that is, later throughout uh, the the process. And so I think it's just about choosing your battle, not fighting with everyone on everything.
Right. Find which hills to die on. And then, okay, so I want to hear a little bit about running a chapter of the Interaction Design Foundation. What has that
Mhm.
experience been like?
That has also been very interesting, and I love it. I'm a very social person, and also, as I said, love very much um, teaching what I know and facilitating for people, so that they could learn what they want to learn. Also, it's a great networking tool and to have. So I do this in a collaboration with my company, Softhouse. So I borrow our company, like a location place, the office, and I arrange this event, one event per month. That all these events about UX and something. So, for example, in September, it's going to be about cybersecurity and UX. In October, someone from Deck University is going to talk about accessibility and UX.
Hmm.
Or I myself talked about sustainable UX design. So it's spatial design. We had another topic this month. So it's like a different UX related topics that we invite, or I invite people who are interested and they know about the topic. And it's a great platform. There are both managers who come, people who work with sales, UX designers, students, UX students. Um, so yeah, it has been very rewarding. I love it. Of course, it has difficulties as well. I have to find people who actually are interested in talking, and that's not many people. But but at the end of at the end, I think it's very positive and rewarding for me.
These essentially like mini conferences, or are they more like meetup, social type events? Or I mean, where's the
Uh,
difference? What's the difference? I don't know.
it's not a conference. It's more of a like a talk. It's an hour talk. So we invite people to our company. It's 8:30 to 9:30 in the morning. 8:30 to
Oh.
8:45, they get to mingle for 15 minutes, and then we offer breakfast when they come. And then in our big conference room, the person who presents something with, it's like a, all the thing, PowerPoint and presentation and Q&A and everything. And then even after the event, the speaker normally stays a bit longer to answer any more questions or mingle or anything that is needed. So it's like a mini conference in like an hour. um, and it's free for everyone, so just join in if you're around Malmö in Skåne, south of Sweden.
And what topics have you spoken on?
I have spoken about sustainable UX design. I have spoken about speculative design, which is a very, very interesting topic. I love it. Speculative design, that I speculated how a future could look like for parents and their children through from the lenses of social media. Very
Hmm.
interesting topic as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. What's the process of speculative design? Like how does someone approach conducting? What do you can? I mean, is there a research process for speculative design that's unique?
there is a research process, and there are a couple of books, very famous books that you could, very thick books, that they have, different examples of speculative projects that they have been working on. And there are also these speculative, they're called like speculative Milano, speculative Stockholm. They are different. There is this, um it's like also like a group that they exist around the world, that they do like once a month, they have events in different cities, talk about speculative projects. And so you imagine how I was inspired by this documentary that came out a couple of years ago about um, social media, that's called
The social dilemma.
The Social Dilemma. Exactly. That's what inspired me. And at the same time, I have a relative who is very interested in the future of her child, and she's very strict about which classes she should take since she was a very tiny baby. Like, she always had like a French class, an English class, and dance class, and she was always busy. So a combination of these two created this project that has been, when I present, every time I presented it, it's been very scary for people, and they were like, "Oh, I need to go home and think about this." Um, Very interesting talk. I love this. So these are the three topics that I talked about.
How was so I really like future thinking and like this idea of speculative design. How do you, I guess, how do you ground projecting out into the future? Like, what do you ground the design or the the project in? Because I think at what point, like, what is the difference between an episode of Black Mirror and a speculative design in a more professional or academic sense?
There are different types of futures, right? Like a probable um, plausible, different types of futures. And when I did my project, since it was based on two things that already kind of existed, so it was like a very close future.
Hmm.
There are already parents who would like to guide their children so they would be the best version of themselves, and also the social media platform that already existed. Um, so it depends on how far into the future you would like to look. Um, my my thought was that I would do this project so that people can relate to it, because if it's far far in the future, it would be difficult for people to if someone says, oh, in the future I see that people don't have bodies anymore, it's like AI, people would be just AI and just brain, that would be a bit difficult to relate to. So it would be difficult. My project was something that already existed, and combining these created such a scary scenario that there is a social media platform that kids are not aware of. It's just for parents. And then parents could go and say to this AI that is trained on their children to say, okay, I want my child to be a doctor, and I want it to be organized, and I want it to be an athlete, and all these things. And the second social media that their children they use, that would, based on the understanding that it gathered from the child and what parents want, they would show content to children so that the children would be influenced by the content. They would become the person that the parents want. It's all in good till the parent is like, I'm a gangster, and I think that's a great thing to be. I want my child to deal drugs, for example.
Yeah, it's an explicit grooming tool.
Yeah. So you could, so it is very scary. It could be super scary.
You're right
And the
though. It's
sessions,
Yeah, sorry, I say you're right though. It's not far off because like even if you look at, I mean, that's like a version of TikTok
yeah,
away. Like,
yeah, exactly. I just didn't use TikTok. I used like a Facebook like platform. Uh, yeah, and it's extremely relatable. I have presented like 3 times already, and people are like, "Can we do this more?" Because it could be reality tomorrow. It could be reality. The platform exists and people exist.
some people would look at that project and say, "That's a great idea. We should do that."
Exactly, exactly. That's why it's relatable.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So okay, so I just want to understand is sort of the process you go through to set a context, like a future state context rooted in the possible steps that were already like the path we're already potentially on, and then from there you sort of design around that future state.
Yeah. As I said, since I wanted my project to be easily relatable, so I chose something very close. And then I followed this book that I had different aspects of um, a speculative project. And then I defined the project based on that and created a prototype based on it and just showed it to people. These
You'll have
books are
to
great.
share the books with me. I'll drop them in the show
Absolutely.
notes. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's very cool. But did you say you said you're passionate about accessibility? Have you also spoken about it?
I have spoken a little bit about it. I'm in the process of getting certified CPAC. Um, I've gone through all the courses in Deck University and everything, so I'm studying for CPAC. So I don't dare to talk about it like I'm an expert, but I have
Sure.
been speaking about it a little bit for sure.
How has what you've learned about it? How have you brought that into your practice?
Um, and the interesting, I was thinking about this actually today. The curb cut effect that is being talked about in accessibility is something that is definitely definitely visible when you work with this.
What will you define what that is for me?
Curb cut effect is, for example, on pedestrian crossings, when there is like um, the level that they heighten from the street, and that is very difficult for people with disabilities to go over, right? So after a while, so they started creating this smooth it up, so it's not, there is no edge, it's smoothed up. And that's not just for people with wheelchair, that was the problem. But then people with I don't remember English words of anything. Give me a second. What is it called? This thing that you buy when you go to grocery and you drag behind you,
A cart.
like old people have.
For holding your groceries?
Yeah, but the old people go to grocery and they buy things and put into this and then drag behind themselves.
Yeah. I guess it's like I actually don't know the term, like a buggy. But anyway.
Yeah. So people who carry things around like with the trolley with a baby, or this car they drag. So it eased up even their lives. They're not disabled, but it eased up their lives. So it's curb cut is something curb cut effect is something that you do with one purpose, but then you realize that it helps more people than just
Yeah.
the target group. So that is definitely the case, because there are lots of people who, for example, temporarily have some kind of problem, or even my own eyes are sensitive to the light of the phone. So when it's very strong, I start, it starts to tear up. So all these things or tunnel vision, or all these things, they are things that if you think about it, um, maybe you do it for a disabled person, but in reality, it helps a lot more people than just a disabled group. I don't know if you should call them disabled though. Is it not like a controversial? You don't call disabled anymore.
I've heard able-bodied, or is it able-bodied? I don't know. I'm speaking out of turn.
I don't know. We go with disabled.
But either way, I think your point is super valid.
Yeah.
Is that when we consider solving problems for what we think of as small portions of society,
Yeah.
we find that there are a lot of cases that are much more generalizable than we used to think they were or claim they are.
Yeah, definitely.
You also have spoken about the concept or topic of stress.
Mm?
And I saw online that you had attended a session called Designing for Stress by the organization Ambitious Empower, led by Susan Winschneck. Could you pronounce her name for me?
Susan Weinschenk.
Susan Weinschenk, who is the author of 100 Things Every Designer Needs to Know About People. And that inspired you to write about the topic of stress in relation to design. Yeah. And so I would love to pick your brain about this concept because I think it's very interesting. So could you start by just maybe defining what stress is?
Yeah, absolutely. So designing for stress. When I actually attended this session, I realized that it's such a useful thing to learn, because when we think about designing for stress, maybe we think about like stressful situations, like I don't know, shootings, like real stressful situations. But that's not only the case. If you think about like when you're in the airport and your flight is cancelled, that is a stressful situation as well. So there are so many application areas that would be really beneficial to learn about this. After the session with Susan, so I got interested and read the book Life and Death Design by Katie Swindler, who talks about the same thing in the book. And but about the stress is It's when there's something unexpected happens, and the reactions that you do is unpredictable. When something stressful happens, then there are different steps that happens, different stages that the person goes through. The first stage is they get startled, they get startled response. Then it goes on to like an intuitive assessment where the person tries to understand if things that happen, is it dangerous or not, and that identifies based on the life experience that they have had. That is also intuition based. So if they think that no, that's not dangerous, and they uh, go on about their lives. If they think, oh yes, this is dangerous, then it goes on to the next stage, which is fight, flight, or freeze. We've seen for sure like people when they go when something happens, maybe like in an accident, when I don't know, a car has something happened to the car, and someone that you don't expect goes and lifts the car and helps someone. They get like a feisty, and they do things that they
Mm.
probably they wouldn't do in like a daily life. Or flight, for example, um, is that when something they don't meet the expectations that you have developed in your life, then that is like based on the intuition that you have developed in your life. Um, there is a cortisol, and then there is adrenaline, and then you probably react like a panic style. You don't know what happens. And that could also be another case, that when you go to a website and it looks a bit weird, and you're like, oh, this website is weird, I don't want to be hacked, so you just close it out. Uh, that is the flight. And then freeze is when you're overwhelmed with what is happening around you, and you can't do anything, you can't decide anything, and it's probably decision paralysis, that you can't do anything, you freeze. After that, you go through the next stage, which is, you in that step, the logic kicks in, and then you realize that, oh, I can actually handle this with like tools that I have as a human being. I don't need probably anything extra. And the last one is the recovery phase, where you try to recover, and that's probably where also the part that designers can help speed up the recovery. But designing for stressful situations is just designing for unpredictability. You don't know what happens, how people react.
So how do you apply that knowledge to user experience design?
Yeah, so it depends on. This was very interesting when I learned about, and I've never thought about this. When you design, there is a difference between designing for stressful experts and designing for stressful consumers. Okay, consumers that are not experts. When you Let's think about the experts. How a person becomes an expert. This happens when they take courses, maybe they practice, they train. I don't know. They experience, they repeat something. When that happens, then they develop intuition. So that thing becomes intuitive for them. So they move from needing to think about something to do it to actually automatically doing it. That's when a person becomes an expert. So what we can do is that when we design for an expert, we need to help them not to need to think about the things that they automatically do today, because they have developed an intuition for it. We want them to spend the time and the focus and their cognitive efforts on the problem, not on the automatic parts, on the parts that they have developed an intuition for. So if you, for example, have ever worked with designing or redesigning a website for experts, so you see that they are aware of where the buttons are. So they move their cursor as soon as they come to the page, they move their cursor to where the button's supposed to be. And if that is the part that they have automatically learned to do, that's their intuition. And as soon as you move that button, then you force them to think about something that they have developed an intuition for. That would be a cognitive effort that they have to put to be able to do their work. So it's always, in my opinion, it's always better to, if you're going to do a redesign for an expert, it's always better to, to do the whole redesign from the scratch than just update something. Because when you just update something, they need to fight their, it's more difficult because they need to fight their intuition and also learn something new. While if you do something completely new, they don't need to fight anything. They just need to learn a new thing. That is a difference. So basically what we should do with the design for stressful experts is to try to help them not to need to think about those automatic parts that they have learned to do automatically and put their efforts into the problem that you're facing.
Would you consider an expert in this context to be like a power user of a product?
It could be that as well. Yeah. Someone is so very much familiar with the system that you're working with. That would be an expert of the system that you're working with, but also an expert could be like a firefighter. So they're still very familiar with the system that you're working with.
Okay, so it can be an expert within a domain that you are designing for.
Yeah. Don't change things that they know by heart. It's supposed to be like this. Keep it familiar. Let them do their thing easily because that part is automatic. Let them put their effort in something that is not automatic. It's a problem that no one else can fix.
So I'm just thinking of how to apply this to a UX process. Is this like understanding the journey, the user journey, understanding the terminology of the domain, understanding their processes so that you can design through and around them as opposed to against them?
Yeah.
Is that kind of?
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. There are also some general, I would say, guidelines, but it's not a guideline. It's just general recommendations that I have learned through my work. That is not only about the experts in a stressful situation. That could even be about the consumers in stressful situations. For example, if the person is just a normal consumer, since we are designing for unpredictability, then we should try to combine writing with visuals. So don't just say, don't touch the door handle. Maybe draw a door handle with a cross on it. Try to visualize it because people don't read. In general, people don't read, and even worse in the stressful situations, they absolutely don't read. So visualize things. You should try to break content into smaller pieces. Again, people don't read. Smaller pieces, quicker, and easier to read. Maybe try to create an interactive experience. If you're going to say, open this door, maybe you should create an animation that shows that you open the door. So you don't force them to actually read, open the door. Try to maybe use like a simple conversational language, like be empathetic. Don't use these big words that don't put more cognitive pressure on people.
Don't make people think when they're under stress.
Exactly. Basically, yes. Try to make information relatable to help user understand the context and understand the situation better. Also, if we think about like strictly designing, try to design error forgiving systems that is easy to do or redo. so that they could see the process, and if they don't like it, they could go back. Don't give them extra stress because, oh, what happens if I click on this button? I can never come back to it again. Allow them to get back. Try to simplify everything. Use fewer choices, less information, less steps to take. Try to streamline the process as much as possible.
A lot of these to me just sound like good practices.
Exactly.
Like, again, though, I think this connects to the accessibility point.
That's exactly
where if you are considering stress, people who, let's say that a segment of your user group who is easily stressed, if you consider them as your target audience, you're designing for everyone.
Exactly. That's actually, thank you for bringing it up, because that's what I was going to get to. That lots of these problems when you're under stress, you get some of these problems, like you get tunnel vision, maybe you start shaking, you have difficulty concentrating, you can't read, all these things. There are people who actually have these problems on a daily basis because of their type of disability. So
Yeah.
when you design for stress, you actually design for accessibility as well.
I like that.
That's what I was going to get to.
Sorry, I spoiled the
No.
finale.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
I also know I'm completely speaking out of my own knowledge base here, and so let me know, check me on this. But my understanding is that sleep deprivation produces similar physiological responses as I don't know if it's like maybe stress, but where I'm going is that they say like if you drive on with sleep deprivation, it's like driving drunk because of your physiological response.
I'm not an expert, but it doesn't sound weird. It could be.
Yeah, well, like in terms of these things like tunnel vision and slow automatic response and things like that, like your body is not well oiled at that point. So I'm just connecting all these different circumstances loosely, right? I'm speculating, bringing it back to the speculative design. No.
But that's kind of temporary disability that I was talking about.
Yes, temporary disability is a great way to say it. Sorry, continue.
Try to, enhance readability, like have large text, important things, big, make them see it easily. Try to remove stressful things. For example, when you go to hotel.com, imagine you're in an airport and your flight has gotten canceled and you need to book a hotel and you're very stressed. And then you open hotel.com and it's like, oh, last minute countdown, book this. This is the last room. Remove all these. They don't need any of these. Remove all these extra notifications that are unnecessary.
Please remove all of those
unnecessary notifications. For sure. And one thing that I actually found very useful is that conduct user testing in the location that the app is going to be used, because lots of times these apps are being used in like an airport, noisy places, I don't know, hospitals, like crowded places. Try to test those when you sit at home or at work. You don't,
in a sterile environment.
It's not the same thing as being like in the context, in the place.
I love this as a researcher. This it's sort of getting a bit kind of ethnographic, and in when you really pull the context into the conversation. And I wanted to ask a question. Now is probably a good time because I'm curious about, like, because again, stress is a physiological response. And I do think context could play a role in this answer potentially. But I'm wondering how you measure for stress. Like, how do you, as a designer or a researcher building an app in a context like a busy airport or something, how do you sort of measure or put a check on or a metric around a stress response? Is it more in like error and things like that, or you know what I mean? Like, because it's almost like your pulse or your blood pressure, like those things are how you would measure stress physiologically, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I would say probably try to be in the location and just wait till that stressful thing happen and then run to people and try to test it? Probably. Because imagine that you're in an airport and go tell someone, oh, imagine that your flight has gotten canceled. And imagine
Yeah.
that's not going to work, because that's probably not going to be the real reaction when this actually happens. So I'm guessing that you should be in the situation and in the context, in the location, and wait till that thing happen and then run to the person and say, please do the testing. I don't know though. I'm just
Because
guessing.
yeah, now we're getting into some of the like old school psychology experiments, where like the fake, of course, none of the names are coming to mind right now, but things that probably would be considered unethical today, potentially, in terms of human subject testing.
Yeah, for sure.
But very, very interesting stuff.
One thing that we should remember is that this, what is it called? Yerkes-Dodson law.
Ah, yeah.
This bell-shaped that talks about there is an optimal, if I'm not mistaken, there is an optimal level of arousal, which in this context it means stress, for optimal performance on a specific task. And of course, that optimal performance, it depends on like your familiarity with the task, and the difficulty of the task. But there is a growth and learning zone. So if you have more stress than that, that's where the optimal it would be optimized. That's the level of stress that you should have to optimize your performance.
Yeah, you just answered my next question. I was going to ask about when stress is a good thing in design. But you just mentioned a good example, learning. So anything with a learning component, there is a certain level of arousal that is necessary for effective learning.
Any type of learning and growth, I'm guessing. Because I'm guessing that if it's more than that optimal level, more stress than that, then you'll be too stressed and the performance will decrease. And if you are less stressed, then you are not motivated to do this thing. So you would underperform, I'm guessing. So there is a balance.
Yeah. I was going to jokingly say that Duolingo should start introducing background noise to their testing as like a form of arousal, right? Distraction, like, because that's contextual. Like, you're not going to go to a restaurant and have a sterile environment, most of the time. But I do think a good example, sticking with Duolingo, of potentially introducing a level of arousal is that they will sometimes will hide the words and only give you the audio and then allow you to reveal if you need it, but they try, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's a level of arousal there.
For sure. Even with the, these strikes that they have, you have 30 days that you've continuously studied. Even that is something that even between my colleagues, I hear they're like, oh, I have like 200 days. I can't not to study today. I don't want to lose that. That is also a kind of arousal level that they have chosen to implement in their system to keep people motivated to do continuous studying.
That is beyond my on the curve. That one is beyond my level of effective arousal because that stresses me out. I always want there to be like a Monday through Friday. It's like for me, it's difficult on a Saturday or Sunday to be to be expected to study.
But as I said, it depends on the difficulty of the task and your familiarity with the task. So if it's going to be about, if you're gonna start a new lesson in Duolingo, for example, if you're gonna start a new lesson and you'll be like, I don't know anything about this, it would be more difficult in compared to if you're gonna just do a review of what you have already studied, so you're much more familiar with that. So I guess it depends on lots of things, but it's a very interesting law. So removing all stress is not gonna do it.
Yeah, I think it's a really important law to consider because, like we're discussing, there is a certain level of arousal that's important, but finding that level and then also making sure that you're effectively navigating the user through the experience and helping them back out, right? And
Exactly.
giving proper, like, there's a lot of balance. There's a
For
huge
sure.
balance there.
For sure. Testing.
1, 2, 3.
I'm guessing, yeah.
Okay. So I have 2 questions for you that I ask everyone, every guest. The first question is, what is a UX or work-related opinion that you may hesitate to share in a meeting?
It's a bit of a controversial topic. I have had discussion about this with my teachers at university, as my professors at university as well. When I started studying digital design, I was working with design. So I was doing things, the homeworks, I was doing them as I was working. And then when I took them to school, the teacher said, no, that's not the correct way of doing it. You're supposed to do it in this way. And and I got into this discussion with my teacher but that's what I do on a daily basis. That's how I earn money. I kind of know what I'm doing, but he was telling me that that's not how you do it based on books. And in school, you're supposed to do based on theory and based on books. And I have a huge problem with that, because I understand that theory is important to know, but I'm guessing the huge number of people who go to school, they're going there so that they would be prepared for the job market. But when they come out and they know only theory that is not applicable in the job market, it would be very difficult to employ these people. And it's not their fault. It's kind of like school's fault, probably.
This is okay. I love this topic because this is one that I am also quite passionate about. I feel like especially in research-heavy academia, it becomes like quite sterile in a way, and there are people in the business world who argue that overly academic research processes are ineffective because they're too theoretical and they're not rooted in the real world, right? Which they have a valid argument. I don't completely agree, right? Like, I think there's a balance, but this critique of academia, I like this. I like your point. I personally feel like there should be courses, right? There should be theory courses or theoretic courses, but there should also be courses of just about how the real world works. Or, like, for example, because of your point of I'm working in the real world and I'm not doing things the way that the book says to do it because of the constraints of the real world or the company that I'm at. Because, like, you always hear too in industry, oh, every job is different based on the company. The process looks a little different at each company. Like, the way that departments collaborate is different at each company. But those conversations never seem to happen in an academic setting, in my experience, because it's so sterile and theoretical and rooted in best practices, which are great to learn. So I will get off my soapbox about this topic, but I think this is a great one.
Yeah. It is a very controversial topic. And that one thing that is great with Sweden is that we have something that's called Yrkeshögskola, which is like a vocational education. And it's like 2 years. So it's not like 2 weeks. It's like a proper program. And it's you go learn programming, you go learn UX design. It's only about the topic. And in their leading team, there are people both from academia and from working industry. Yes, I'm in one of those. And when we try to when they just try to decide what kind of topics every year they go through the topics, and then they invite us all in, and they ask like, what do you think, what kind of topic we should teach, because it's important that these people are ready for working when they come out, that they know what you're doing, so they are employable. You can't just send people out with no knowledge and then expect them to get employment. It's just difficult.
Yeah.
That's great. I think I had a professor in my master's program that basically said you should include like your references, or you include the nuances and the minutia of the research in the appendix of the deck. But no one's going to look at it. Like, as a best practice, you should include it, but just know it is very unlikely that anyone will actually engage with it.
For sure.
Yeah. And that, I've always carried that with me because I think it's true. And as a professional that's passionate about your own domain, you care about that stuff. But in reality, in the real world, you are working with people who care about getting problems solved, answers to questions, blockers moved out of their way. Like, they don't actually care about what you care about. They care about moving forward with whatever work they're doing.
They care about money. Let's be honest. They care about money. So it's always great to, include like too long to read thingy, so that if they don't want to go through the whole thing, they could just read the key points and then they have it. But yes.
But I will say, as like a argument against what we're both agreeing on, not even against, but just another perspective, is that I have spoken with people who feel like, I'm going to focus on research specifically, that UX research is getting too casual, that it's not getting dense, like it's not dense enough in a lot of contexts anymore. And they were saying that as a negative. And my speculation is that the reason why research is getting like narrowed into one or two methods, as opposed to a really robust mixed methods, really comprehensive academic approach to research, is because of the pushback from our partners. Right? There's such a push in the industry for us to be more business savvy, more business minded. How is this contributing to the bottom line? So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, where it's like,
exactly,
you have to find a balance.
Also, from the company that you're working with, from the customer that I'm working with, they want this project done in 6 months. I can't spend like 3 months on the research. I need to do it as quick as possible. If I get the money, if I get the time, absolutely, why not? I know how to do it. It's just that I never get the chance to do it in the way that is academically supposed to be done. So there are many parameters here that affects.
So let me ask you then, based on your opinion here, how would you approach improving the academic experience? What would you change about it?
I think I would definitely include practical parts from the market, from the real industry where people actually are working with it. It's great. It's absolutely necessary to know the theory. I'm not saying that theory is bad. It's great. You have to have the knowledge. But you don't do theory when you work.
Right. You apply it at times.
At times, yes, but you don't do it like every day, because that's just not going to happen because of all the limitations that exist. So it's important.
Yeah, where's the I was gonna say, where's the class on answering emails?
Yeah, no. What happened to that? So I think it's important that the students know about both theory, but also the reality of the industry. That's how I would do it. I as I say, I love the vocational education that exists in Sweden. So you learn everything. You learn both.
I think there should be an interdisciplinary course where you actually simulate the real world in terms of a project where a researcher works with a designer and an engineer, and maybe they pull in sales or marketing, or you know what I mean? Like go through collaboration, cross-functional collaboration.
That's what actually these programs have. So you go to school, and then there is something that's called lärande arbete, which is learning through work. And then the students, they have to go find companies who want them as a intern, sometimes paid, sometimes unpaid. And then companies, they have their own projects, and they put them together with a senior, or they give them the projects, and they do like a real world project and learn how it actually works. This is a great concept that they do here, and I find it very interesting. And people who come out of it, you're very knowledgeable.
That's awesome. Okay, my final question is a question from a mentee. And what they want to know is, what do you know now about the industry that you wish you knew before you started?
That there is a lot of pushback from UX is not as known to people as you think when you work in the industry. There are a lot. I always work UX first, so I start designing even before anyone sets up the GitHub. But there are lots of companies who are not aware of the value of UX and how it can actually help them win their customers. They do things based on I know I'm the stakeholder, I know this. We do it as I say because I know how it works. But then you do the research, and with the help of data, you show actually that's not true. It's opposite. There are lots of pushbacks, and still lots of people ask me, what does UX mean? What you do? Yeah.
Why are you here?
Why do you live? Yeah, some kind of so it's not, especially during the last couple years since the beginning, or maybe in the middle of Corona. For some reason, everyone got interested in UX, learned UX, and the market got very saturated with lots of new UX designers. And just because we are many, it doesn't mean that people know what it means and they welcome it. There are lots of pushbacks from the companies that I work with.
Yeah. No, I have a theory on that, because I do think that is a pretty common issue at companies. And I think what it is, or my speculation is, that the UX has grown so quickly in the last 20 years roughly, that companies almost adopted it or said, oh yeah, okay, we need that. Like we need someone to focus on that, as opposed to it just being a skill, but then never successfully altered their model, their business model.
Yeah.
In terms of, by business model, I mean organizationally. And a lot of companies have never successfully changed their organizational approach to product design.
Yep.
Or, and so it's almost like we're an add-on sometimes. And it's like, when you build a new house and then you just have an add-on, or like, I don't know if you had this experience, but when I was a kid, when they worked on the elementary school, there was like an extra building outside that they would build just because they had to do construction on part of the building.
Yeah.
So then you had class in that random other room. Like sometimes it's like we're in there. It's like they won't let us in the building.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep. For sure. Yeah, it's a good thing to know that it's not as glamorous as everyone think. And I'm saying this, and I love my work. I really love it. But still, that's the reality. It's not as glamorous. If you want it glamorous, you have to work on it and learn a lot more than what school teaches you.
And academically speaking, where is the course on pushback and strategic communication?
Yep. Definitely. Yeah. But there are lots of good material available online. Great books. Articulating design decisions. There are many, many good books that you can read and learn about, for sure. But communication is definitely a key. Learn to communicate and defend your design decisions.
Yeah. Articulating design decisions is a great book. If you have any others that come to mind, share them with me, and I'll definitely add them in the show notes.
I will, for sure. I'll send you a link.
Well, Nashmil, thank you so much for being here. If anyone wanted to reach out to you online, where can they reach you?
Thank you for having me. I'm as I mentioned, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can definitely find me there. But also my Instagram, Nashmil Mobasseri, and my email is nashmil.mobasseri@gmail.com. So very happy to connect with like-minded people.
Okay. Well, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Same to you. Bye.